I knew it would destroy him. That's why I did it. And when I watched his face as the truth sank in, I didn't flinch. Not once. If you like real confessions like this, hit subscribe before we dive in. My name is Rachel. I'd rather not say my last name. I wasn't always this woman. I used to be soft. The kind of wife who gave benefit after benefit of the doubt. The kind who forgave even when everything inside screamed not to. But there comes a moment, a very quiet, chilling moment, when something inside you breaks. Or maybe not breaks, just shifts, hardens. For me, that moment came 2 weeks after my 3rd round of antibiotics in the same year. I sat on the edge of the tub, staring at the prescription bottle in my hand, and I just laughed, quietly, bitterly. That was the moment I stopped crying and started planning. You need to understand, this wasn't about getting even. It wasn't about winning. It was about ending a war that he kept starting and I kept surrendering in. My husband, well, ex-husband now, had this talent. A twisted gift for lying with a calm face. I'd catch messages, photos, even receipts, and every time, he'd find some way to turn it around on me. Accuse me of snooping, tell me I was too sensitive, gaslight me into silence. But he crossed a line when he started bringing the consequences of his infidelity home. STDs. That was when the numbness set in. That's when I stopped trying to fix the marriage and started figuring out how to blow it up. He worked for a well-known real estate firm downtown, made good money, had this whole ego trip going on because of it. His boss, Greg, was a clean-cut, recently divorced man in his early 50s. I'd met him once at a Christmas party. He flirted. My husband noticed. I didn't think much of it then. But as the months went on, I kept that encounter in the back of my mind. Like a weapon I didn't know I'd need. And when I finally needed it, I didn't hesitate. I know how this sounds. I've played this scenario in my head so many times, wondering if it makes me a monster. But you know what? Monsters don't bleed for years while smiling at dinner parties and folding their partner's shirts. I didn't storm into revenge. It wasn't impulsive. It was calculated, cold, deliberate. I reconnected with Greg through a casual message. Something innocuous, friendly. I knew he was lonely. I knew he respected me. And I knew exactly what I was doing. You don't become invisible after being cheated on repeatedly. You become observant, hyper-aware, tactical. I studied my husband like he was a puzzle I had to solve before I could finish the game. I learned what mattered most to him. His image, his position, his reputation, his job. So I aimed for the thing he cared about more than our marriage, his career. Greg and I started having lunch, then drinks. Then it turned into something more. He didn't push. I initiated. I needed to feel control again. I needed to feel wanted. But more than that, I needed to feel powerful for once. Sleeping with Greg wasn't about desire. It was about declaration. A silent scream that I mattered. That my pain wasn't just something to be shrugged off. I made sure the evidence would find its way to my husband. An old trick I'd learned from him. Ironically, a misplaced text. A photo left open on purpose. He walked right into it. The day he found out was the day the mask finally cracked. He came home early, phone in hand, face pale. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just looked broken, and I felt nothing. Not guilt, not joy, just nothing. That was when I knew. I wasn't trying to hurt him. I was trying to end him, or at least the version of him that hurt me. The real irony? I didn't even need to explain myself. Greg had already called HR. My husband's behavior at work had been problematic for months. But now, with this, they had grounds. He was fired 2 days later. I handed him divorce papers the same week. People always assume revenge feels good, like some big triumphant movie moment. But it doesn't. It just feels like silence. Heavy, echoing silence. Still, silence was better than living under the noise of betrayal, and for the first time in years, I was the one holding the pen, not begging for loyalty, but writing the final chapter myself. Everyone thought we were that couple. You know, the ones with the big smiles at weddings, matching outfits on vacation, all those perfectly staged Instagram posts. People used to comment things like, "You two give me hope," or "relationship goals," and I let them believe it. I even believed it myself. For a while. But what people saw was just a carefully curated version of my life. What they didn't see were the late-night fights, the silent dinners, the way I'd flinch when his phone lit up. What they didn't see was the truth. When I first met Eric, he was charming. That kind of magnetic charm that lights up a room. He was attentive, funny, ambitious, everything I thought I wanted. He swept me off my feet so fast I barely had time to process it. Within a year, we were married, and that's when things shifted. It started small. He became distant, always working late, always glued to his phone. I asked questions, but he was quick with the excuses. "Work's crazy. My boss is on my back. Stop being paranoid." I wanted to believe him, so I did, again and again. The first time I found out he cheated, I was in denial. A random woman had messaged me on Facebook. A blurry screenshot of their messages, some photos of them at a bar. She said she didn't know he was married. I confronted him. He swore it was a mistake, that she was lying, that I was all he wanted, and I forgave him. I wish I could say it was because I was strong, but really, it was because I was scared. Scared to start over. Scared of what people would think. Scared that maybe, if I just loved him harder, he'd stop. But he didn't stop. The affairs continued. Some I caught, some I only suspected. Over the years, I became a full-time detective in my own marriage, checking call logs, watching for mood swings, learning the signs. It drained me, emotionally, physically, spiritually. What hurt more than the cheating was how casual he became about it, like it wasn't even worth hiding anymore. Like I was so predictable in my forgiveness that I'd never really leave. And the worst part, he made me feel crazy for reacting. There was this one night, and I'll never forget it, when I confronted him about a strange number on his phone. I had all the evidence, texts, voice messages, and he looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're imagining things. Maybe you should talk to someone." He tried to make me think I was losing my mind. That was the beginning of the mental spiral. I started questioning my own instincts. I stopped trusting myself. I became smaller, quieter, more afraid, until the infection started. 3 different times I had to see my doctor for treatments. 3, and each time I confronted him. And each time he claimed it wasn't from him. Said I must have had a reaction to something. Once, he even accused me of cheating. That broke something in me. Not just the betrayal, but the audacity, the cruelty, the way he used my pain as a shield for his own behavior. And I still remember sitting in that clinic office for the 3rd time, gripping the paper sheet on the table, trying not to cry as the nurse gently asked if I was safe at home. That's when I realized something. I wasn't. Not because he hit me, he never laid a hand on me, but the emotional damage, the gaslighting, the manipulation. It was like death by 1,000 paper cuts. Quiet, unseen, constant. I wish I had left then. I wish I'd packed a bag and walked away with my head held high. But I didn't. I stayed. I told myself it was for stability, for appearances, for the mortgage. But the truth is, I stayed because I didn't know who I was without him. He'd broken me down so slowly that I didn't even recognize myself anymore. I became a shell of the woman I used to be, smiling on the outside, dying on the inside, nodding through conversations, showing up to family events, pretending everything was okay. And people believed it, because I made it believable, because I was too ashamed to admit I'd built my life around a man who never truly saw me as anything but an accessory. Something shiny to wear in public and discard in private. The lie I lived with wasn't just the marriage. It was the lie I told myself every morning just to get through the day, that this was normal, that it was survivable, that love was supposed to feel like this. It wasn't. And the day I accepted that truth was the day everything started to change. There's something terrifying about realizing your heart has finally gone quiet, that the fear, the love, the aching, it's all been drained out. Not with a bang, but with a slow, steady leak over years of betrayal. That's where I was when I made the decision. I didn't stumble into the affair. I didn't get swept away by passion or drunk emotions. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It was strategy. I had given this man everything. Years of my life, my body, my loyalty, my silence. And he repaid me with lies and diseases. So, no. This wasn't about seduction. It was about precision, about leverage, about making him feel something for once. Greg, his boss, was always watching me at events. At the company holiday party, he hovered a little too long when we spoke. At one summer BBQ, he complimented my dress in a way that lingered. At the time, I just brushed it off. But when I made up my mind to act, I remembered every single moment, and I used them. I started simple. A direct message on LinkedIn. Professional but a little warm. A follow-up text. A coffee. Greg wasn't stupid. He knew something was up. But he didn't pull away. He leaned in. Maybe he liked the attention. Maybe he saw it as some kind of power move, sleeping with the wife of his top-performing agent. Maybe he just wanted someone who looked at him like he still mattered. Whatever the reason, it didn't take long. The first time it happened, I won't lie, I felt sick afterward. I sat in the shower until the water ran cold, not because I regretted it, but because I knew this was the point of no return. I had become the kind of person I used to pity, but the next time, it didn't hurt as much. The time after that, I barely thought about it. And when Greg started opening up to me, casually complaining about Eric's attitude at work, how he always felt entitled, how he didn't take feedback well, I listened, and I added fuel to the fire, gently, with a smile. I never outright suggested anything. I didn't need to. Greg was the kind of man who connected dots without being told to. I made sure Eric would find out. I left traces. A hotel receipt in the drawer, a faint cologne that wasn't his. One day, I even accidentally sent him a selfie that wasn't meant for him. Something a little too dressed up, a little too posed. He bit. Of course he did. I watched the confusion morph into suspicion. The suspicion into obsession. He started checking my phone, the same way I used to check his. Started tracking my location, snapping at me over nothing, losing sleep, losing control. For once, I was the one holding the strings. And then, I left the final breadcrumb. A message on our shared tablet. One I knew he still checked even though he pretended not to. It was from Greg. Short, suggestive, time-stamped, obvious. Eric saw it. He didn't say a word that night. Not one. But the next morning, he called in sick. The first time in years. And stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling. I made coffee like nothing had happened. I wasn't afraid anymore. He spiraled fast after that. Greg, whether out of guilt or manipulation, started pulling back from him professionally. Suddenly, Eric wasn't being invited to meetings. Clients were being reassigned. His name was getting left off emails. He came home furious, paranoid, muttering things like, "They're trying to replace me." And they were. I made sure of it. 2 weeks later, they let him go. Officially, it was about performance. Unofficially, everyone knew. Word travels fast in that kind of office. When I handed him the divorce papers, he finally broke. "You ruined my life," he said. And for the first time in our entire relationship, I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Good." No yelling, no slapping, no chaos. Just cold, clean consequence. He had ruined me, piece by piece, for years. And now, I had returned the favor in one clean sweep. You can judge me if you want. I know people will. But unless you've lived in the skin of a woman who's been repeatedly betrayed, repeatedly lied to, repeatedly infected with physical reminders of someone else's carelessness, You don't get to speak on what's too far. Because for me, sleeping with his boss wasn't revenge. It was closure. It was a mirror held up to the monster he'd become. It didn't all crash at once. It unraveled slowly. That made it worse for him, I think. Watching everything slip away day by day, thread by thread, while I stood still, silent, unmoved. He thought he was untouchable. That's the thing about men like Eric. They think the consequences never apply to them. He had always found a way to land on his feet, always had some excuse, some woman to fall back on, some charm to manipulate people with. But this time, there was no parachute, no safety net. After the job loss, he didn't even try to defend himself. That surprised me. Maybe part of him knew deep down that the empire he built was made of paper. He had burned too many bridges, crossed too many lines. Greg wasn't even subtle about it. The HR email was curt, cold, just like me. And I watched him deflate. At first, he tried to act indifferent, like he didn't care. "I needed a break anyway," he muttered, pacing around the kitchen in sweatpants that hadn't seen daylight in years. He said he was going to start his own firm, go freelance, take time to think. But his eyes, they told the truth. He was humiliated. His identity was built around that job. The nice suits, the power lunches, the way people respected him when he spoke in meetings. Without it, he was just Eric, a cheater, a liar, a man with no career, no wife, and no clue what to do next. He started drinking more. Not excessively, not yet, but noticeably. Beer during lunch, whiskey before dinner. I noticed the glasses piling up. The empty silence between us grew heavier, and I was calm, not spiteful, not gloating, just detached, like a surgeon watching the results of a precise incision. When I served him the divorce papers, I didn't expect an apology, and I didn't get one. He looked at the envelope, flipped it over a few times like it might change, then laughed bitterly. "You really did it," he said. "You destroyed everything." I wanted to say, "No, Eric, you destroyed everything. I just turned on the lights." But I didn't. I didn't have to. He already knew. His family blamed me. Of course they did. His mother called me crying, saying she didn't understand what happened. I didn't answer her messages. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Some of our mutual friends, the few we had left, unfollowed me. Others reached out quietly, almost nervously, like they didn't know who to side with. I didn't respond. Let people pick their truths. I was done managing perceptions. The house got quiet. Too quiet. He didn't move out right away. For 2 weeks, we lived like strangers in the same space, passing in hallways, avoiding eye contact, eating in separate rooms. The man who once knew every inch of my body now couldn't even look me in the eye. And I didn't care. The day he left, he didn't say goodbye. Just slammed the trunk of his car and drove off. No tears, no final fight. Just silence. I stood by the window and watched him go. Not because I wanted him back, but because part of me still couldn't believe I had done it, that I had followed through, that the girl who once cried herself to sleep in that same house had grown into someone capable of this. It wasn't victory. It wasn't peace. It was something else, something colder, emptier, but it was mine. I had expected some grand sense of closure, a movie ending, a dramatic breakdown, or some emotional breakthrough. But all I felt was stillness, like I was floating in a life that no longer belonged to him. Or maybe finally belonged to me. People love to talk about karma, like it's some magical force that balances the scales. But sometimes karma needs a push. Sometimes it needs a little help. A name, a body, a plan. He destroyed me first, but I finished the story. And even though I didn't walk away smiling, I walked away standing. People think revenge feels like fireworks, loud, bright, triumphant. But in reality, it feels like ash. Just gray and quiet. You don't dance afterward. You don't laugh. You just sit in the stillness of what you've done, and you wait to feel something. It's been over a year since Eric left. The papers went through. I changed my name back. I sold the house, moved cities, got a new job. On paper, I rebuilt everything. And most days, I feel proud of that. But every now and then, it sneaks in. The ache, the echo, the question. Was I really any better than him in the end? I know what people would say. That he deserved it. That I took back my power. That I gave him a taste of the pain he served me for years. And maybe they're right. But knowing that doesn't undo the fact that I crossed a line inside myself that I can't uncross. I became someone I don't fully recognize. Someone who weaponized sex. Someone who used another human being, Greg, to wound a third. I didn't care about the collateral. I didn't stop to ask who else would get hurt. And yet, I do it again. That's the part that scares me. Not the act itself, but the numbness that made it possible. I didn't cheat for love. I didn't cheat for lust. I cheated for justice. Twisted, silent, surgical justice. And even now, even knowing how cold that makes me sound, I don't regret it. But it still hurts. Not because I miss Eric. I don't. I miss who I thought he was. I miss the version of me who still believed people change, who still had hope that love was enough. Now, I don't trust easily. I look at kindness like it's a trick. I sleep alone by choice, even when I don't want to. I don't let anyone close enough to break me again, because I know what it took to piece myself back together. Greg tried to reach out after it all went down. A few polite messages, a phone call I ignored. I didn't want a relationship. I never did. He was just part of the plan. I ghosted him, and he eventually stopped trying. Sometimes I wonder if he knew the whole time, that he was just a pawn, or maybe he thought it was something more. I'll never know, and I'm not sure I care enough to ask. There are nights when I lie in bed and I replay it all. The infections, the excuses, the betrayal, the silence, the shower where I sat crying into a towel because I didn't want him to hear me fall apart. And then I think of how I ended it. Not with a scream, not with a slap, but with something far quieter and far more devastating. I didn't destroy his life because I lost control. I destroyed it because I finally had control, and in a strange, unsettling way, that's what healed me. Not peace, not forgiveness, but power. Would I recommend this to someone else? Never. It changes you. It costs you a piece of your soul. But in my case, it was the price of survival. So here I am. Free, technically. Stronger, maybe. But softer? Number. That part of me is gone. And honestly, I'm okay with that. Because while I may not sleep easy every night, I sleep alone, uninfected, untouched, and finally, unafraid. And that, to me, is worth everything.